Cik, satu, cik, cik doa, cik doa, cik.
Al-Quran. Agar kita
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan dan salam sehat bagi kita sekalian Bapak Ibu. In this beautiful day, a beautiful moment, we would like to deliver our positive energy and our special greeting to the Honorable Director of State Politeknik of Jember, Mr. Saiful Anwar, STPMP, Vice Director of Academic, Vice Director of Finance, Vice Director of Student, and Vice Director of Collaboration Affairs, State Politeknik of Jember. And also we would like to deliver our positive energy and special greeting to all keynote speakers and author of 4th International Conference on Food and Agriculture, or we call it ICoFA, and also keynote speaker and author of a 2nd International Conference on Social Science, Humanities, and Public Health, or we call it ICoSHIP. Please give applause to the Honorable Keynote Speaker of ICoFA, Dr. Nishu Gupta, Supplier Research Management Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai, India. The second, Professor Young Min Kim, PhD, from Division of Plant Bioscience School of Applied Biosciences, College of Agriculture and Life Science, Kyungpook National University, South Korea. The third, Professor Dr. Tosawat Sutawan from Sakona Konrajabat University, Thailand. The fourth, Assistant Professor Bibin Bintang Andriana from Department of Biomedical Chemistry, Graduate School of Science and Technology, Kwansei Gakuin University, Japan. And also, author of ICoFA from Algeria, from India, from Indonesia, and from Japan. And warmly welcome to the keynote speaker of ICoSHIP, Mr. Adriadi Novawan, MID, from State Politeknik of Jember, Indonesia. The second is Professor Datin Dr. Nurisham Muhammad from Management and Science University, Malaysia. And the third, Professor Hiroyuki Miyake from University of Kitayushu, Japan. And also the author of ICoSHIP from Canada, India, Indonesia, Japan, and Philippines. I would like to give greeting to all of head of 8 Department of State Politeknik of Jember, Head of Research Center and Community Services, State Politeknik of Jember, and our beloved all participants of ICoFA and ICoSHIP. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to tell us the theme of ICoFA today is scientific and technological efforts in sustainable food and agriculture. And this conference will discuss in the several topics, including agriculture, engineering, and biotechnology, organic agriculture, animal science related to the food, food science and technology, food safety, food security and sovereignty, IT for agriculture, and renewable and novel energy sources. And in its 2nd International Conference on Social Science, Humanities, and Public Health, or ICoSHIP, the theme is the application of science and technology in the field of social science, humanities, and public health to support Sustainable Development Goal, or SDGs. So ladies and gentlemen, for opening our agenda this morning, let's all singing Indonesia National Anthem. Menyanyikan lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin dipersilahkan berdiri. Hadirin disilahkan duduk. Ladies and gentlemen, ICOFA and ICoSHIP is our annual event. So for making better running of this agenda, we would like to invite Mr. Alwan Abdurrahman to leading a prayer for us. Mr. Alwan, time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, let us bow our head for a moment. Pray to God, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, that their international conference can be praises to all of us. I will lead this prayer on the teaching of Islam, and thus you are not Muslim. You are pleased to pray according to each of your beliefs. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Hamda syakirin dan na'imin. Hamdan yuafi ni'amahu wa yukafi majidah. Ya Rabbana lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhikal karim wa adim sultanik. Allahumma ahsin akibatana fil umuri kulliha wajirna min hajjid dunya wa adzabil akhirah. Allahumma inna nas'aluka salamatan fid din wa afiyatan fil jasadi wa ziyadatan fil ilmi wa barakatan fil rizqi wa taubatan qabla al maut wa rahmatan indal maut wa maghfiratan ba'dal maut. Allahumma hawwin alaina fi syakaratil maut wan najata minan nar wal afwa indal hisab. Allahumma ighfir lil muslimin wal muslimat wal mu'minin wal mu'minat al ahya'i minhum wal amwat innaka sami'un qaribun mujibud da'wat wa qadiyal hajat. Allahumma ansur man nasaraddin wa qdil man kadalal muslimin wa ali kalimatika ila yaumiddin. Allahumma anfa'anna al ghalaa wal balaa wal wabaa wal fahsya'a wal munkar wa suyufal mukhtalifat wa syada'ida wal mihan ma dhahara minha wa ma batan min baladina Indonesia hadza khassa wa min baladil muslimina amma innaka ala kulli syai'in qadir. Allahumma rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adzaban nar. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Alwan Abdurrahman. Ladies and gentlemen, we are running to the next agenda. It will be welcoming speech by Chairman of Organizing Committee, Dr. Insinyur Nantil Bambang Eko Sulistyono Magister Science. Time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Greeting to all of us. Namo Buddhaya, Om Swastiastu, and of course, wish you all happy and healthy. The Honorable Director of State Politeknik of Jember, Bapak Syaiful Anwar, STPMP, and the Honorable Vice Director of State Politeknik of Jember, that are Vice Director of Academic Affairs, Bapak Suratno, Eskom Mkom, Vice Director of Finance Affairs, Bapak Insinyur Abi Bakri, MSc, and Vice Director of Student Affairs, Bapak Wahyu Kurnia Dewanto, Eskom Mkom. And the Honorable Head of Center of Research and Community Service, State Politeknik of Jember, Bapak Dr. Budi Haryono, MSc. And the Honorables, all Head of Department and Lecturer, State Politeknik of Jember. And not forget our respectable keynote speaker for ICOFA, Dr. Nisu Gupta from Electronics Communication Engineering Department, Chandigarh University, India. And the second, Professor Kyung Min Kim, PhD, from Division of Plant Bioscience School of Applied Science, College and Agriculture and Lab Science, Kyungpok National University, South Korea. And the third, Professor Dr. Sutawat Sutawan from Sakonakon Rajabat University, Thailand. And the fourth, Assistant Professor Bibin Bintang Adriana from Department of Biomedical Chemistry, Graduate School of Science and Technology, Kwansei Gyakun University, Japan. And keynote speaker for ICoSHIP, the first, Mr. Adriadi Novawan, Master Education from State Politeknik of Jember, Indonesia. And this second, Professor Hiroyuki Miyake from University of Kitakyushu, Japan. And the third, Professor Datin Dr. Nur Hisham Muhammad from Management and Science University, Malaysia. And for all of our beloved participants that's attending in this international webinars today. The first all, praise to be Allah, the Almighty, for giving us guidance and healthy until this very moment, so that we can attend in this event. Secondly, as the General Chair in this international conference, I would like to thank for the organizer of the event for this opportunity, so that I have the opportunity to inform you more about the international conference. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to take this opportunity to inform that in the 2021 State Politeknik of Jember, or POLIJE, will again hold an annual event. It is the international conference which consists two activities, namely the fourth international conference on food and agriculture, called ICOFA, under the theme of scientific and technology efforts in sustainable food and agriculture. And the second activity, the second international conference on social science, humanity and public health, is called ICoSHIP, under the theme, the application of science and technology in the field of social science, humanity and public health to support sustainable development goals. Ladies and gentlemen, this activity is held online for today, starting from today, 6th of November 2021 until tomorrow. And this event is also a form of commemoration of the 33rd POLIJE anniversary in bahasa Dies Natalis Politeknik Negeri Jember yang ke-33. And in this opportunity, I would like to report to that this morning international webinar will be attended by as many participants from abroad and also participants from Indonesia. The author for ICOFA webinar are from Algeria, 3 authors, from India, 30 authors, Japan, 3 authors, Thailand, 1 author, and from Indonesia, 299 authors. So total author for ICOFA is 318 authors. And then the author for ICoSHIP webinar are from Canada, 1 author, from India, 4 author, Japan, 1 author, Philippines, 5 author, and from Indonesia, 163 author. The total of author for ICoSHIP is 133 author. Ladies and gentlemen, this event is a real contribution from POLIJE to all lecturer, researcher, student, and community, both nationally and internationally, as official channel of POLIJE for development the chair works, research work. Thus, it is hoped that the lecturer and researcher, as well as the community, can develop scientific competency, literacy, with internationally indexed scientific journal. In addition, with this event, it is hoped that all of us, the participants, can establish communication and friendship which can ultimately result in educational collaboration, especially in field of research and scientific journal. Therefore, on this occasion, I invite all of you, ladies and gentlemen, to able to actively participate in livening apps and making this event successfully. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the time limitation, I think that all I can say. Thank you very much for all of attention, assistance, in order to make our annual agenda a success. Not to forget, on behalf of the entire committee, we apologize in advance for any shortcoming in the implementation in this event. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, always get us all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nantil, for welcoming speech. And for the next speech, it will be opening speech and opening ceremony of 4th ICOFA and 2nd ICoSHIP State Politeknik of Jember, and will delivered by Director of State Politeknik of Jember, Mr. Saiful Anwar. Time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The honorable keynote speakers, distinguished researchers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to extend my warmest welcome. And of course, it is a great pleasure to see you all in these virtual rooms, participating in the 4th International Conference on Food and Agriculture, or ICOFA, as well as the 2nd International Conference on Social Science, Humanity, and Public Health, or ICoSHIP, in the year of 2021. Although the COVID-19 pandemic is remaining to happen, the State Politeknik of Jember attempts to conduct the scientific conference regularly, as the conferences are the main agenda of its anniversary. Next to that, the above conferences are a part of commitments of the State Politeknik of Jember to realize its vision to be an outstanding vocational higher education in Asia 2035. During 33 years of its age, the State Politeknik of Jember always commits to increase scientific activities by providing several schemes of competitive research grants for its lecturers, because research is one of the main performance indicators of higher education. The honorable keynote speakers, distinguished researchers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. In this opportunity, I would like to pin to important point, especially for the lecture of State Politeknik of Jember. Firstly, I do expect that the research results can be disseminated to the scientific, including industries and all stakeholders, so they have access, benefits, and ability to utilize. As previously mentioned, the State Politeknik of Jember is a vocational higher education, meaning that all the researches have to be applied to solve many problematics faced by society as well as industry. Hence, collaborations with industries are highly encouraged. Secondly, I believe that these conferences facilitate the output of researches to be published globally. However, I would like to embolden the lecturers of State Politeknik of Jember to publish their scientific articles, not only in the conference proceeding, but also in international high-impact journals. Nowadays, the interdisciplinary collaboration in food, agriculture, and computer science and information technology is also expected to trigger research and development activities, especially in the tropical area or even in weather area. Therefore, I believe that attending this conference is an opportunity for you to find any partners to conduct cooperative researches. The honorable keynote speakers, distinguished researchers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. My sincere thanks must go to the keynote speakers of ICoFA, namely Dr. Nisu Gupta from SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai, India. Professor Kyung Min Kim, PhD, from College of Agriculture and Life Science, Kyungpo National University, Korea. Professor Dr. Tosawat Setawan from Sakon Nakhon Ratchabad University, Thailand. Assistant Professor Bibin Bintang Andriana from Department of Biomedical Chemistry, Graduate School of Science and Technology, Kwansei Kekwin University, Japan. And also the keynote speakers of ICoSHIP, Mr. Adriadi Novawan from State Politeknik of Jember, Indonesia. Professor Hiroyuki Miyake from University of Kitakyushu, Japan. Professor Datin Dr. Nur Hisam Muhammad from Management and Science University, Malaysia, who prepare and share their research experience with us. I must express my deepest gratitude to the Center for Research and Community Service, State Politeknik of Jember, and the organizing committee for their dedication and hard work to prepare these conferences since the early 2021. Finally, and surely, I wish you have nice virtual conference. And with the word of Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I am officially opening this conference. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much for our director for opening ceremony. But before that, for opening ceremony is marked by the beating of gong beside Bapak Direktur. Bapak Ibu hadirin, kami informasikan kembali bahwa penanda bahwa ICoFA keempat dan ICoSHIP kedua dibuka oleh Bapak Direktur, ditandai dengan pemukulan gong bersama-sama, di mana Bapak Direktur akan didampingi oleh para wakil direktur dan Bapak Dr. Insinyur Budi Haryono, Kepala P3M Politeknik Negeri Jember.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Thank you so much for Director, Vice Director, Chairman, and Head of Community Services State Politeknik of Jember. Could you like to back to your seat? So ladies and gentlemen, with the opening ceremony by the Director, so it is a time that we have already waited from this morning, and in this whole day, until this afternoon, we will have a session, a discussion for ICoFA and ICoSHIP, and who moderated by our moderator of ICoFA. It will be Mrs. Putri Santika, and also for moderator of ICoSHIP, Mr. Ganesha Harimurti. Both of them are teacher of State Politeknik of Jember. So before that, let's check together for our connection, so we can make sure that our connection is good. So could you like to raise your thumb to all the participants? Yeah, could you like to showing up to make sure our connection is good? Yep, okay, give an applause to all of you, all the participants. Wish you are happy this morning until the end of this agenda. Okay, for Mrs. Putri Santika and Mr. Ganesha, I will give opportunity to you for lead our discussion session. Time is yours. And before that, we would present. Ini ditunggu-tunggu oleh Bapak Ibu ini sebenarnya. Presentnya apa? We would like to present our teaching factory video of State Politeknik of Jember. Let me see it together. Okay, so as I mentioned before to all participants, for discussion session will led by our moderator, Mrs. Putri and Mr. Ganesha. Are you ready to lead it? Okay, time is yours, Mr. Santika and Mr. Ganesha.
Okay. I am so sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Dian. Maybe you can put the volume lower.
Okay, our voice well. Can you try it?
Upon time, UK. In this master dissertation was on curriculum and pedagogy discourse of English professional communications at a UK university. He teaches general English, English for specific purposes, translations, academic writing, professional communications, and public speaking. His recent interest is in the studies of curriculums, pedagogy, and material development, especially in the English language education in the higher education context. Currently, he's doing research on how technology supports EFL teaching and learning inside and outside the classroom in light of socio-linguistic theories. The most current publications are focusing on the application of technology in EFL classroom, underpinned by the ecological perspective in language of teachings. So there is a spill of information, a spoiler. There will be ecological perspective in his presentations as well. I could go on and on with a remarkable and astonishing achievement coming from Mr. Arif Novawan, but I will save the mystery for all of you later on. You can ask him directly. And now I can go to the second speakers coming from Professor Datin, University Malaya. It brought back the memories when I was still in the University Malaya, but coming from different departments in Faculty of Art and Social Sciences. Let me read the CV from Professor Datin. Professor Datin, Dr. Hisham Muhammad, is a PhD from University of Manchester and getting her master degree in MED of TESOL, University of Manchester as well, and bachelor in University of Malaya. Professor Datin, Dr. Hisham Muhammad is the Vice President of Academic in the Management and Science University and Professor in the School of Education and Social Sciences at the university where she has been a faculty member since 2010. Professor Dr. Nur Hisham completed her MED TESOL and PhD at the University of Manchester, United Kingdom, and her research interests lie in the area of curriculums, development, syllabus design, and methods development, as well as ESL. She has also collaborated actively with researchers in several other disciplines of English language, education, technology, and education psychology. Professor Dr. Hisham has presented papers at various conferences in Malaysia, Japan, UK, Indonesia, Vietnam, New Zealand, Australia, US, Egypt, and Mexico. Okay, so the last will be coming from Professor Yoruki, but I couldn't tell you the very detail of his remarkable achievement, but I suppose can give you a glimpse of knowledge about what he has been really focusing on today. Hang on. Okay, he's a professor in the Department of Policy Studies of University of Kita Yusu, Deputy President of Food Bank Kita Yusu, live again. the Kitakyushu Japan Chair, Kyushu Okinawa Region, Japanese Society for Environmental Education, and joined the University of Kitakyushu in 1991. So those are the information we can possibly get a glimpse of thoughts and brightest ideas of the very distinguished speakers of today. And I would like to invite the first speaker because I don't want to hold any longer for the ideas and thoughts to be widespread to all the presenters. I invite you, Mr. Adriano Fawan, to have your presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a very nice introduction, Mr. Moderator. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, I can hear you fine. Crystal clear from here.
Yeah, I was very sorry because I've got cough a couple of days and still here in my throat right now. I hope it will not disturb my presentation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, well, actually, I'm very honored to be speaking in front of you all here, particularly speaking together with our keynote speakers from Malaysia, Professor Datin Dr. Nur Hisham Muhammad, and also from Japan, Professor Hiroyuki Miyake. It is a very honor for me, really, and also because of this event. So we are from different institutions, disciplines, and nations coming together in the second international conference on social science, humanity, and public health, organized by Politeknik Negeri Jember. So I think this is a very great opportunity to share to each other. So I would like to start off by speaking on the theme of this conference. Basically, this conference invite us to consider the role of SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, for the future of our world, the Earth we live, of course. So why should we consider this? Perhaps in the philosophical debate, SDGs can become a controversial issue with regards to the terminology used. However, I believe that this controversial aspect could reshape the SDGs implementation into a better state, of course, and also without ignoring the reality. We want to take real action as the academia, who have responsibility for increasing our collective contribution, of course, to the Earth sustainability. And I believe that we all coming to this virtual conference, bringing invaluable materials to be shared and discussed in a critical manner, but of course still friendly to each other, right? Okay, so particularly I will present to you reframing the English language education in light of the ecological linguistics. And the subtitle is The Ecological Perspective, Toxic or Vitamin. Of course, this is metaphorical, toxic or vitamin. It means that I'm going to discuss to which extent the ecological perspective can help educators reshape perspective of what language is and how to approach it in learning and also in teaching. I believe that we are all here are the agents in English learning, not necessarily as teachers, of course, but also learners, I mean. I myself, until now, is an English learner, and I really enjoy learning the ecological view because it offers more exciting and inspiring views, which I hope will influence my learning and also pedagogical practice. I have, would you please share the screen, Mr. Moderator?
Yes, wait a second, sir. Here you are.
Okay, thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have 5 points to present. And then sin is the center. Epoch is the age category. So it is like we are saying that we are living in the age where human is the center of the world. It means that the world we live is shaped by human in the past, while the future will be shaped also by our today's activity. So one of the ideas behind Anthropocene epoch is that the need for investigating the world in the past for sustaining the world in the future. So in fact, the world issues until currently have been so much overwhelmingly in fraud, and what happens to our environment today, like for example, forest destruction, pollution, mismanagement of lands, and many others, and also health issues, particularly after COVID-19, educational issues, social issues related to equality, gender, population, and many others, especially under the SDGs aspects. And considering the Anthropocene epoch, then given the reality of the world issues, an extremely important question, to us is that how can we, the world academia, contribute to the issues? Let's take a look the data of the UN, from the UN in the right side. So SDG real acceleration action from the UN data. So based on the survey, UN surveyed the activities of some sectors which can contribute to the SDG, from civil society, private sector, academic, UN system, government, and other uncategorized sectors as well. And surprisingly, ladies and gentlemen, the data reported to the UN indicates that academia has the lowest percentage compared to the others. Look at the yellow part of the pie chart. The civil society has the largest contribution as reported to the UN, then continue to government, then UN system. After that, private sectors, and finally, the last, the academia. So of course, this is a bit surprising. Perhaps there are many explanations about this, but at least it reflectively tells us something dealing with the earth where we live. So what can we, academia, do related to this? I think it is also the case for me right now in this presentation to share what is my concern related to the issue. Particularly, there is a strong connection between SDG and the earth issues, and also perhaps our professional agendas. And for me, making endeavors to reframe my pedagogical practice in light of the ecological values becomes very challenging and also meaningful, right? Let's move to the next slide, Mr. Moderator. Okay, so I have actually two questions, and I survey my students based on this question. The first question, can we connect between language and communication? Well, I believe that most of you will directly answer, yeah, yes, of course, absolutely yes. Because language, of course, has connection with communication. We cannot survive in communication without language. But interestingly here, based on the survey I got, most answer yes, no one answer no, but some answer maybe. And then I got information from those who answer maybe. So sorry. So this is a very interesting data from my students that answer maybe in this question. He thought that in language we learn grammar, but in communication we don't learn it. So he experienced that there is no connection, or it is a bit difficult to connect between grammar learning and then speaking. So that's why he chose maybe. All right, so I think it is common that we believe that language has connection with communication. But for the second question, in answer to this question, I think we need a while to think about it. From the data I got, the answer maybe is the most popular answer. Then continue to no. Then finally, yes. So perhaps in answer to this question, we need to think about it for a while. Or we might think that connecting language to ecology can be exaggerating. So maybe it is unnecessary thing to do. So why should we connect them? So in what reason? Does it give any logic, academic logic, for example? In the scholarly arena, some might consider that this view challenges the status quo without adequate theoretical evidence. Some might think it can be interesting as a part of language science, of course, but with trivial implication on policy and practice. But others argue that the ecological perspective is not only challenging, but also evidence to better understanding of language and particularly in the context of linguistics and education. And then in this presentation, I take the third stance, of course. My purpose is not to answer all questions related to ecological perspective, but I would like to highlight how important is ecological perspective in terms of when we learn language and also in terms of pedagogy. All right, let's take an inspiration from a famous linguist, Michael Halliday, for the next slide. Yeah, I think we are familiar with seeing language in a view of Chomsky, saying that language is innate or internal to human being. But we usually take another alternative as recommended by research studies. It is usually language as an external to human being, as Saussure put it. And also there are many other variations of the elaborated theories of related to it. Perhaps seeing language in more systemic way is credited to Michael Halliday, particularly because he successfully inspired the language educators and linguists around the world with his transformative speech entitled New Ways of Meaning. The speech has challenged linguists around the world to reframe their belief in language and language learning and also language teaching. So language, in his view, is systemic. It links to the ecology and all of the ecology members, of course. And even he stated that problems related to the earth ecology is also problems for the applied linguist community as well. So let's take a bit, think about it related to language. Can we continue to the next slide, Mr. Moderator? Yeah. All right. Imagine a relationship without language. Is that possible? One of the best way to reveal the meaningful reality of language is by thinking of its absence. This is because we usually recognize someone's values when we lost him or her. So the same case is, I think, for language. So what we can achieve then when building relationship, for example, without a language? Will that be possible without language? We might think that an imagined word that we can make by relationship, for example, happiness, family, togetherness, and also others, but without language, what will happen? Let's continue. The next slide. Family without language. Yeah, I think we might realize that language has a value that is beyond the language itself. So I value beyond the language itself. It is language, but its impact, we are talking about its impact, is more than the reality of language itself. It is human being life. Next slide, please. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Imagine also our office. We may have a very luxurious interior and facilities in it, but without a language, it seems that, yeah, almost everything, our activities are shaped by language, including the next slide. Yeah, a conference like this without language, we can imagine. Then my question again, is it exaggerating to say that language has the connection with human life, including the ecology? It seems that all human activities are only possible with language. Our children attended school, they learn to relate to others, then they become adults, they work and also others. All are possible because of language. So language changes us. Language shapes our life. This is a huge actually, not small. So for the next slide, can we find any place like a languageless environment on the earth? I think there is no place like this. I believe that we might not be able to survive in this place like this. A life without a language is like we live without soul. And perhaps that is a zombie, I guess. All right, let's continue to the second point of language. So after what I have presented earlier, I think we recognize that language is very central to human life. But because of its centrality, and we are very close with it, then we sometimes do not recognize its meaning. As an example, as I presented earlier, a student even degrade language into the level of grammar. So, which is actually very mechanical in nature, but this is a very trivial way to put a meaning on language. So many famous linguists such as Halliday, very important with his systemic linguistic concept, and also Pennycock, critical applied linguistic, and Coley, ecological psychology. They map theoretical, empirical, and also experiential evidence on this, and they agree that yes, language is very important. Language shapes our relation, it shapes who we are, and even it creates new words. Let me put it like this simple excerpt. As the conversation in the English class at the university level, while reading it, we will recognize that language makes possible, we can imagine what is happened there in the excerpt. It makes someone inspired, related to an imagined multilingual identity. Even though still far way ahead, of course, right? We are talking about a very long-term process, through the real relation and connection with intensive and quality events, what is imagined can possibly be nurtured only because of simply language from the teacher, conversation from the teacher, and then inspired. And then the student, she used to be monolingual in nature, but she is now adapting to new identity, multilingual identity from her relation. She speaks Bahasa Indonesia with her friends, local languages with her family, and then speak English with other friends. So it shapes, language shapes something. Let's continue, Mr. Moderator. Right, so looking at language in a way we have done so far is not actually not enough to take the true meaning of it. So far, our belief and practice are influenced by particular points of view, such as, yeah, I think language is innate, internal to human, and then we have language organ. So learning gives, in this case, give a small effect on language development. But of course, in modern perspective, it is a bit, I think no one believes this thing, right? But usually we believe that language is external. It can be manifested, for example, in the behaviorism approach. Can also be in social approach. There are actually many variations, but it can also be elaborated, can be internal, both internal and also external, with very unique, of course, variation. In short, therefore, what we have done so far actually is influenced by our views like this, which is not enough for taking the true meaning of language. We need the view offered by ecological linguistics. Now, let's go to the ecological linguistic, Mr. Moderator. how long I still have time?
You have the most of the time of the world, Pawawan. It's okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Wow.
It's okay. It's okay. You can go on. It's okay.
Okay,
you can go
so
on.
sorry. Yeah, okay, let me continue to this. Yeah, it is a bit complicated, but I believe you can check it later, everyone, what is ecological linguistic. But I would like to highlight that both definition tells us that ecological linguistic is a very broad heuristic, meaning that even though its coverage is very wide, but we cannot break down into the spirited parts as what we usually do in traditional linguistics. So it is, of course, then multidimensional, covering social, cognitive, psychological, and physical domains. So this is, of course, multidiscipline because it invites many disciplines to take place in the arena, from natural science, sociology, anthropology, education, linguistics, psychology, and many others. All right. Let's consider why ecological linguistics. Continue to the next slide, Mr. Moderator. Well, actually, I have a very nice picture here, but it seems that it has to be skipped. Can we continue to the next slide? Next slide. All right, this one, yes, I think can be skipped as well. Right, this one, yeah. No, the previous one, Mr. Moderator. Ah, yes, this one. All right, everyone. Well, actually, I can take this as an illustration. So this is metaphorical, basically. When we take ecological view is like this one. As if we want to know the reality of the sea, we might want to explore it from the shore, and then we will find the beautiful moves, patterns of the nature, such as white sands, the waves, and limited number of fish and plankton and others. This is to illustrate that traditional linguistic actually has the limitation in understanding what language is and its implication on the pedagogies. And then alternatively, more challenging than the former is by diving inside the sea to explore more reality inside it. While we are diving, the deeper we dive, we find that there are unlimited number of creations with a huge diversity of its characteristic. And sometimes we already have an assumption about all things based on what we see outside the sea. The deeper we dive, we will see unpredictable reality inside the sea, which might be different from what we previously assumed. So now, since we have explored the deep, our perspective on what is the ocean is better. So this is the case when we view language in the ecological perspective. In the status quo pedagogies, this is the implication. The focus is on the skills related to forms and the linguistic features. But in more ecologically, then the pedagogies consider all heuristically, but with a focus on the agents, the self, the identity, perception in action. So this is, I think, challenges. And the next slide, Mr. Moderator. All right, so a bit quick related to this. So this is a better understanding of language teaching and language learning. I'm sorry, I have to ask you, Mr. Moderator, how long I can continue my presentation?
It's okay, Bawawan. You can go for these presentations as you please. It's okay, it's okay.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So, as I said that better understanding is very important, better understanding of language teaching and language learning. So for example, we previously know that there is input that influence our English development skill, but it is based on the ecological perspective, affordance. So we move from input to affordance. And that's number two, from language to languaging or translanguaging as well. We so far learned that English as a language, but it is also actually right that our learning does not consume languaging process. Languaging means there is an active meaning-making process. So we still found that we memorize everything before we present something. For example, right now, when we are doing a presentation like this, we sometimes memorize everything first. So this is actually against the concept of languaging. In languaging, we will try to start with a message in our mind and express it authentically through spontaneous speaking. So in the conversation in the box, for example, this is a very example, we may ask a question, what is the point of the teacher actually? Or maybe, what is the material? We maybe ask this. Well, actually, learning a language versus learning languaging is different. Both are different. The conversation shows that the teacher does not teach a language, but teach languaging. So he focused on working on the perceptions on the students rather than on the linguistic features. There are some more on the list, but I will not address all of them one by one, but the list actually helped us to consider the prominence of ecological linguistics in these modern practices. Let's continue to the next slide. Yes, we can skip this, Mr. Moderator. The last slide, yes, this one. Well, very sorry with these crowded things. But basically, how to make it quick? Yeah. Well, actually, this is a process. In action-based, we need to start with the most valuable aspect of the education. I might say that we need to provide our students with the experience first. And then the question is that, what kinds of experience? So this is important. Experience of mutuality, relation, engagement. You can see the bottom part of the chart, not only in the cognitive level, but also in the age ecological system. So the curriculum, pedagogy, assessment have to construe and take into account these all of things. So there is no exact pattern for this, but it is important to plan the opportunities, again, the opportunities for linguistic affordance. So if I may say that the key principle here is the affordances. The affordance in the level of agency. So we can say that there are 4 scales. Agency in this case is the context in individual context, and then we continue the wider context in the interaction, and then the wider context in the situation, and also the culture. So it is talking about actually the context. So we are moving, when we are teaching using action-based, we are working on the perception of the students in the level of agency, but connecting at the same time with the context in the level of interactions, situation, and the cultures. So this is in short. Sorry. Then, of course, everyone, there are also many considerations related to this, including maybe you recognize that the microgenetic domain, ontogenetic, and also sociocultural, phylogenetic things. So they become the properties of the sociocultural theory as well. So within this chart, actually, the ecological teaching, or we can say that action-based teaching, what is required here is the concept of action-based teaching. Even though this is complicated, but it is not very complicated, because in practice, we only need action, interactive action. Can we continue? The next slide, right. This is the last slide before conclusion. So based on this slide, actually, even though theoretically action-based teaching is confusing, but in practice, it is very practical and easy. Why? Because the theories try to explain it in system level, affordance, for example, but in fact, in practice, it is very practical. So, for example, like small group conversations, discussion, joining in English debate, and so on and so forth. But here, what is important is that the task for the educators is to design how to plan learning activity which can work effectively in the level of perception first. then what is perceived by the learners in this case has to fulfill authenticity in the real life on behalf of the real self, agents, not simulative, not speculative, and also for learning only. This is also space to develop sense of ownership in respects to, for example, languages, multi-languages, for example. And also it must be autonomous, meaning that planning in the level of thematic teaching with some degree of flexibility in pedagogical sequencing and pacing, for example. It means that learners will have to learn not only to perceive the action, but also to choose what and how within the activity. And then engagement. So engagements mean that it is not only involvement of the agents into learning, but engagement starts with the interpretation, sustained in perception, and for affordance. We need some degree of quality and intensive interactions. So the relation also important here. Relation among the agents, students, teachers, and also environments. Shortly, ecological relationship. Then the context in all levels. So question like this, what are the impacts of learning then in the level of situation, in the level of cultures need to be deliberately considered. So it is time to conclude my presentation, Mr. Moderator, with the last. I do agree with Maria Montessori, the greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say the children are now working as if I did not exist. It means that the role of teacher is as facilitator for the ecological learning and at the same time as the agents of learning and also teaching. We need to give time for them to perceive more and also to act more and not giving our time mostly to dominate our teaching, for example, like that. And also Fetes say that when comparing between other theories and ecological perspective, the ecological explanation offer more promising foundation for critical reasoning than any of other alternatives. Then a very famous SLA expert and also methodological, ELT methodological, say that this ecological orientation paves the way for the future. Then for me, ecological approach, sorry. For me, ecological approach is a vitamin for elite practices, undeniable for those who seek for meaningful language learning and teaching across disciplines with respect to the Earth's ecology. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I give back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Adri Novawan. Okay, that's a really food for thoughts and vitamin indeed. Okay, so we have already got the idea of how to link the language teaching methodologies with the environment awareness, and we couldn't, wait any longer for the second keynote speaker from Professor Dr. Nur Hisham Muhammad. I will invite you, Professor Nur Hisham.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moderator. I'm allowed to share my own screen, right?
Yes, please.
All right, okay. Can you
Recording
see?
in progress.
Can you see?
Yes, I can see it very fine here.
All right, okay. Just in case. All right, let me start. Okay, is it still morning in Jakarta, where in Indonesia? It's still morning here also. Good morning to Mr. Moderator and also my esteemed and respected keynote presenters and also the participants of this second International Conference in Social Sciences, Humanities and Public Health. And I'm going to start on something on the current challenges in education. We've seen a lot in the last couple of years. And I'd like to share a very small, actually, concept paper, which has been the starting point of many of my students' research, except that I did not, and I cannot publish the results just as yet because most of it is still ongoing. But I'm going to share this small concept paper that I have. Okay. Sustainable Development Goals, or what we call SDG, and in 2015, the world leaders adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and it's called 2030 Agenda. And this is a global commitment towards a more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive development with 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and 169 targets. I think, okay. It is a new kind of universal set of goals. And out of this 17 goals, yeah, one of it, goal number 4, it's quality education. And it comes with this indicator of ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. It sounds like the normal mantra that we've had for so many years, but somehow this impacted a lot in the recent years because of also some other changes that has happened. And with more than 200 indicators, and it covers 5 dimensions: that's people, the planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. And how right and how focused it can be. I'm sure you've seen in the last 2 years that the SDGs help a lot. Now, when we talk about technology and digital education, it to be, and everything was going on what we thought was perfectly planned. And if you look at the targets, I just wanted to show you that it's here. The target is for 4.4 actually here, and also the means of the implementation of SDG. SDG is implemented, not implemented, is used, yeah, of course. Our leader in Malaysia is one of them, but it is picked up by most of the higher institutions, including my university. And Mr. Moderator, I'm an alumni of University of Malaya, but right now I am a professor in Management and Science University, another university in Malaysia. Yeah, just to share that with you, just to make sure that, you know, we're in the correct university. Okay, and it's picked up a lot, yeah. And in MSU, we call it Management Science University, we picked up 4 indicators, and we're very strong on SDG 4. Okay, technology and education. Technology transforms education. Even when I was doing my master's and my PhD, I did a lot of education technology, studied it, learned it, and also applied it. And it was moving very fast. And now it's one of the key of education. So when students learn and we want to empower them at every stage of their journey, we want to give them, put them on the path of personalizing their learning. And technology also empowers students actually by giving them their own of how they want to learn, their own ownership, making education more relevant in their digital lives and preparing them for the future, because the future is there in technology and in the 21st century. So technology in education and the right devices in the students' hands, yeah, and the right teacher and the right approaches will help prepare them with a career and technical skills that they need to be successful today and tomorrow's workforce. Then came, sadly, COVID-19. So the COVID-19 pandemic has an impact on higher education as universities close their premises and countries shut their borders in response to lockdown measures, some more extreme, some less extreme, but whatever it is, COVID-19 have left an impact on the well-being of the country, the government, and on higher education, on the school, on primary education, even the preschool. Some more than others, some are not so impacted, but some or other, everybody's lives, yeah, every walk of life there is on this earth was impacted. And it's changed the education landscape And I think forever, because we have found new things and we are using new things. We are now accustomed to new things, and I do not think we will go back really to square one where we were before COVID-19. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it will be. Maybe we will find some of what we've used to, we can use it again, but in a better, in a broader perspective, and in a kind of a better landscape for education. So preliminary, a lot of data projected education losses at many levels and verified, but there's no actually data on long-term outcomes, of course, because COVID-19 is just like, what, 2 years now? So, but what we know is virtual learning has become a norm. Okay, a lot of institutions, a lot of schools do not want to stop education because the children can't be without education for a long time, and we don't want to stop that, especially in Malaysia. I think we try our best. A lot of universities just went on and tried to adapt and bring in new things and new ways of reaching out to the children and to the learners. So what's the technology? Before COVID-19, we wanted to balance technology and books while meeting the needs of the students. And we wanted to use digital materials. We also wanted to print materials in teaching and learning. So we had that problem of that challenge of technology, because sometimes, you know, Google can be like, you know, our favorite Google, Mr. Google. Sometimes it can be a problem. Sometimes it can be very useful. We don't want students to rely on that and not read books. You know, we want still them to go to the library. We still want them to, even if they can't go to the normal library during the COVID-19 pandemic, we want them to actually access the books online, and the e-library and things that's accessible for them. But we want them to read. We want them to read journals. We want them to read articles, you know, not just Google everything that's not verified, some verified on Google. So it was very difficult. Before the COVID, it was already difficult. There was a lot of plagiarism. There were a lot of students were like withdrawing from reading printed books and materials. And then it came COVID, and it was worse because then everything was online, and students actually resort to getting information online than actually trying to access the e-library or the books, the virtual books, because sometimes it's easier because e-library also have problems with the number of people accessing the same line and things like that. So later we'll see those challenges. But for teachers, when you become a teacher, the challenge is always to prepare the lessons. And the key word is engaging lessons using technology, because you remove everything else, you remove the classroom, you remove yourself from the class. The students only have you virtually. What they also have left of everything that's being removed from them, the classroom, the excitement of going to class, is actually just the lessons. So if your lessons are not engaging, then you lose everything. You lose their concentration, their focus, and you lose them trying to learn from you. So we wanted to actually provide balanced education. So we wanted at 21st century, when we talk about 21st century education, we were moving nicely towards balancing the academic content with skills development, soft skills, you know, communication, teamwork, language, like what was discussed just now by the first speaker. A lot of things we're trying to balance. We were doing well. The whole world was focusing on 21st century education. And then we wanted also to prepare the students for the real world challenges. We wanted to expose learners to the real world problems and scenarios. And we shifted from the traditional teaching and learning to 21st century learning. We wanted more student-centered learning. It was task-based learning. We wanted problem-based. We gave them community-based learning. We gave them a lot of new kind of approaches. came out during this 21st century learning and teaching, which was, we were going on just before the pandemic. Everybody was excited. We went to flipped classrooms. Teachers were experimenting what worked and what doesn't, and all these new approaches bring new light. And everybody was happy that, that we were actually trying to provide that balance and to actually prepare the students actually for what is outside there, the real world challenges where everything is not like what is in the book and in the classroom, which is like a control lab, okay? And then we came to, suddenly we are all left with online learning. And we can't stop because we know that the 21st century learning approaches were going the right direction, and we wanted to prepare the students and the learners towards this, real world out there. So we needed to optimize the online learning, and it needs the right infrastructure and the support that for the online learning. And it's also, we needed a better designed learning modules. We must remember at this point that online learning was there. They were teaching online. They were like, part-time classes, weekend classes, asynchronous, synchronous learning. We had all those actually before we started online proper during the pandemic. But it was, what would I call it? A support system for teaching and learning. It was not exactly, we were not focusing on it. It was not the main way of teaching and learning. So we were just like using it. It's like an accessory to you teaching and learning. So when it became the focus and what it is, then it was very, very worrying, because then we had to look into everything and people were scrambling. There were a lot of problems at this point when we started. There were students who only had a phone, and some had computers but no handphone that is smart handphone. So to reach them was difficult. And we had students in remote areas. They were all gone home, and they can't come back to the university because of the pandemic. Everything was locked down. They were, we can't leave the house. And until a point where the government actually decided that the students who had all these challenges, like they can't get good coverage for the internet and they can't get the classes online, were allowed with special permission and letters to actually cross borders and come back to the university. And the university actually opened what we call residential places or areas, rooms, hostels, for them to actually stay so that they can get the internet of the universities. So all this on learning, suddenly, we discovered that now that we're focusing on it, there were other problems. Infrastructure, it is really was a problem at the beginning. Everything suddenly, the computers became more expensive, and the internet lines became more congested, and easy main day of on internet became a challenge because everybody is accessing the same line, and the providers, actually the internet providers, was also not ready. It's like a highway, a 6-lane highway suddenly have more cars that needs like a 10-lane highway. So that's the reason why the challenges of the online learning at the beginning was really very challenging. And I was one of those who had to actually start the online learning for my university, and it was really challenging, but we managed, and we became, we understood what was going, and we focused on the right things, and we developed that as fast as we can, because there was no time to wait. We just need to go on. So we also prepared a better design kind of learning module so that, we still want to enhance the learning experiences of the students. In MSU, we are very particular about ensuring that the students graduate with the proper the proper and the best learning experiences possible they could out throughout the 3 years or 4 years of learning in the university. Because a paper qualification, it's not as what would I call it, as good, or as representative as the learning experiences that they have got. So we begin to understand that the educators, this is like a two-way kind of learning. The educators and the learners themselves are understanding on the digital curriculum. You know, the teachers were learning, and everybody was like relearning everything to go as fast as possible or to go online. All right. All this scrambling of, whose Zoom is better, which line is better, is it Zoom or is it to use Teams, Microsoft Teams? What do we use? Do we use Google Classroom or we use our own platform? In MSU, we develop our own platform just like Google Classroom so that the students do not have to use the Google Classroom but use our own portals. And in all these means of scrambling, trying to make online learning good and acceptable and the best for the students, we forgot that we're moving too fast onto a platform which is not, what would I say, the norms, of everyone. And not everyone, not every single student or person handles everything. They're not the same. So, I might be able to actually very fast, sustainable to change, but, not everybody does that kind of thing. So the negative mental health of online learning is increased anxiety and absenteeism. You go online and you switch on your cameras and you start talking and you realize that there are only 2 cameras on and the others are off, and you start asking and they become very anxious. One, because they're scared that halfway through the internet will go off and they're being pressured into getting the video on while it actually costs more internet and they can't afford it. This kind of things. There were many changes the government and the Ministry of Education had to make, like the teachers cannot force the students to on the cameras because some are using phones and they can't help it. And a lot of absenteeism, students just on the Zoom or whatever platform they're using and they're not there. You start calling their names and they're not there. And also, Olses and Bezundin Hout in 2018 said all this increased anxiety and absenteeism is actually from the increased demand for new technology skills, productivity, and information overload. You kind of can overload a lot of information online instead of teaching, because when you are teaching in class, you do not actually give that much of information, but online it's very easy. You can get carried away because it's like now I'm showing you the screen. I can put a lot of things on that and people can read it and it's very clear. You don't have to like squint your eye and look at the LCD or things like that. So, and not listen very fast, you're talking. So when you have all these things, you tend to give a lot of information and the students get more and more anxious, and this actually, it's not good for the well-being of the students. So we try to balance and promote healthy and social, emotional, and behavioral development of students. It's not easy because they're online and you tend to miss a lot, but we try to spread the awareness of mental health, and it's very different communicating and learning in a classroom virtually, where you don't have classroom. Actually, you're in your house and you don't have friends. Your friends are all virtually. And recently, this was very, very, very clear. And recently, the government of Malaysia announced that we are to open, we can open our universities and schools, and on the 15th of October, and the university opened, and you won't believe it. Students were like asking, when is it open? When is it open? A week before it's open, and they're all coming back. And his parents keep on calling and asking us, are you sure the university is open? My daughter can't wait to go back, that kind of thing. Of course, we have regulations, and some cannot come back, and that increased the anxiety because only full vaccinated students are allowed on campus, that kind of thing. Although with the social distancing and the new norm of living, students are still excited. You can see it on their faces when they enter the classrooms. Some for the first time. some actually started university life being online. So it's the first time walking into the campus, looking at the buildings, going into the classrooms. It all brings them a lot of, happiness and excitement. Okay, and we want also, and we then have a lot, we had to increase a lot of counselors and also a lot of people to actually provide the comprehensive student support and services when they come back on campus because they've been online so long. Okay, when we would attend cases that this can lead to a depression and stress and anxiety, which could then result in poor academic performance and eventually dropouts from the university or schools, whatever they're studying, colleges. And then we have another problem. Yeah, when you go online, then you have online assessments. You can't go online, teach, and then ask them to come to university and do the exams. At that time, it was a lockdown, and everybody has to be on we still have to have assessment. You still have to move from semester 1 to semester 2, year 1 to year 2. So we have to get them to take an exam remotely in a secure virtual environment, and we had to use the latest technology for that. So, of course, there are benefits of online examination because you can use what is that thing called virtual MCQs, and it's easier for the teacher. It's also easier for the students. You can just key in, you can just answer the MCQs. But we needed to think of cheat prevention because the students will not be only answering the questions, but they also have access to a lot of other devices, the phones, which can access the internet, and they can talk to their friends on the WhatsApp or Telegram, and they can discuss. So that was, it is overcome. We have a lot of proctoring of online examinations. We still have online exam supervisors and invigilators, and we randomize the questions. You make sure it's like an open book assessments where the students can't Google the answers anywhere, that kind of things. All right, we give them only enough time to do everything, to answer the question, response to it. Okay. The only problem we have with online assessments is the internet access and also the bandwidth, and the implementation, again, of training for both the educators and the students. We found out that a lot of students prefer online assessments because they feel like, the nervousness and the anxiety of going to a hall and sitting for the exams is not, it's better doing it at home than actually going to the examination rooms. Now, we go very fast from face-to-face teaching to online, and we forgot that even digital knowledge needs some kind of literacy in the classroom. So we needed to create an awareness of the necessary standards of behavior in an online environment, how to be not rude, the living and going to classrooms. But the students would give all kinds of answers and responses like, suddenly there's no light and they have to leave and that kind of thing. But you need to create this awareness, and nothing is better than the teacher or the lecturer itself talking about it and coming to a compromise situation at the beginning of the lectures of the semester to make them understand. And there are a lot of code of ethics now of classroom behavior in online environments. And we also need to understand, get the students to understand the shared social issues created by digital technologies. When the students actually go onto online, and because we have to use, we're doing online classroom, the students in the school, actually, they're young. Okay, the university students probably will be already exposed to online gadgets and devices. But the students now, the younger ones, where parents initially did not want to introduce them to the internet, have to because of this in online classroom. Can you imagine a child as young as preschool have to be given a computer already, and God knows what they can do. And now children at a very young age have an iPad or a tablet, that kind of things. And parents got very worried because of all the social issues, the exposure of these children and students to the danger of being on internet, the problems of being on the internet. So we need to teach them, the students, to be responsible for how they use technology to interact with the world around them, because digital platforms make students very vulnerable to criminals and bullies and sexual predators and that kind of areas we do not want the students to get into. So it's very important that the teacher and the lecturer and the parents come hand in hand in making sure that the digital literacy in the classrooms understood by the students and monitored by the parents and also by the teachers or lecturers. So learning inequality, we started off with SDG 04. We talk about making sure that education is for all and equal and things like that. But then we realized that when this happened and things have to go online and all these technologies and gadgets in devices that's just coming to the market. Every year, Apple introduces a new iPhone. Every year, two years, they come up with a better, faster kind of devices, laptops and tablets and iPads, So there's Samsung, so there's everybody. People are going for the economic kind of values of these devices and making everything faster and faster. Internet is faster, the operating system, iOS is faster, everything is faster. But people, it is actually leaving a very big gap. There are a lot of children and learners who unfortunately come from not as good socioeconomic kind of levels from the rest, and this will result in a socioeconomic gap. And this will eventually, at the end, will also move towards a digital divide, and we don't want that. And that's the reason why it is important to go to the basics of when you start the class. Don't go for devices or applications that's very new. Of course, it'll be better, but you will be leaving and keep on leaving students who does not have the access further and further away. So we talk about learning inequality. It refers to students' accessibility to learning resources and facilities, and it then also involves students' participation and attainment in classrooms. And some students have limited access and some have more access to technology tools and advanced learning materials. So we need to have this balance. We need to handle this well. And this comes from us and not from the students. Yeah. And again, now, maybe, I discussed this with my colleagues at work, and sometimes we feel like it is also, a blessing. There's a silver lining in the clouds of this COVID, because it does do some kind of pedagogical retraining for the teachers and lecturers. I have friends who was not very particular and particularly interested or bothered about all these technologies. But of course, we that was trained in education technology and all that is always given interest, but some are basically very, they're not bothered about this, but they have to, because now they have to use it. So we started training teachers and lecturers how to teach online, how to make the class more engaging. The new platforms, the new applications, they started to know everything what there is, Padlet, Google Classroom, and how to use it in teaching. And they've become very accustomed to it, and they're very excited. And alhamdulillah, I think a lot of teachers and lecturers did this retraining and went through this process, and is very happy with what they understand and can use now. So when we talk about literacy, this now includes media literacy, digital, computer, of course, health and emotional literacy, and also cultural literacy. Because if you teach international students, you will see a different kind of cultural kind of impact in online classrooms than the local students you're teaching. All right. Okay. Technology impacts on education. Of course, we always say that geographical and borderless reach, it is borderless. The world is borderless when it comes to technology and with education. And there's time flexibility and the 24/7 tutorials. It can be good, it can be not good, positive or not negative, but there's time flexibility. I find that some students, even requested, can we have class at night? And because now they don't have to go to campus, but actually they can just on Zoom, and they feel like it's better that they have a break in between classes and ask for classes at night, that kind of thing. It makes learning more affordable. You don't have to pay for transport. Some can stay very far away and do not have to fly or come to the city where the universities are situated to actually learn. Information sharing made easier. You can work or study anywhere, and you can become an online teacher or learner. And like I said just now, a teacher and learner can develop and master ITQ skills. There are more equal opportunities for learners with access issues and disabilities, and it saves time and benefits mental health. I just actually summarized what I've said in the last maybe 20 minutes or so. Okay, I started in year 2020. I teach research project both for BTESOL and MTESOL students, and somehow their most favorite topics nowadays is always about, online learning. How does student respond to online learning? What is that thing called? Is Zoom a better platform than something else, Google Meet or something like that? They do that kind of projects, yeah. But what we found is a lot of responses from the sampling and from the respondents is that they find it very difficult doing tasks, because when the teachers wants to make it engaging, they have some kind of they give tasks, and the students find it difficult. The students also have a lot of connectivity problems. They also lose the face-to-face peer interaction. For a teacher, they find there's no eye contact and body language, and this hinders classroom control. And you feel very exasperated. I felt this before too, like, oh my God, you just, you don't know whether they're learning, number one, number two, whether they're listening to you, and you somehow either do not have that grip you have usually when you stand in front of class. And the teacher keeps on having to keep the class engaging all the time, not to lose the students. All right. So, and last but not all, the breakout rooms is a great help, especially in Zoom. Yeah. And I think the students find it very interesting and very, they feel that that's the best they could ever get in getting their tasks done. Okay. I think that's all, Mr. Moderator. Thank you very much for the chance given to me. And thank you.
Thanks to you, Professor Norisham. Okay, that's abundant and a very wide information coming from Norisham. And we could possibly know many things related to how to develop our SDGs from now on. And we cannot wait any longer for Professor Miyake to share his thoughts and ideas today. And before we continue to Professor Miyake, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand after these sessions and you can ask directly. And if you've got a problem with the coverage, internet coverage or data, you can possibly put it in the comment box and I can say it to the keynote speakers. But if you have a problem with English, you can DM me in Bahasa and I will translate right away the questions to the respectable speakers. Okay, Professor Miyake, I invite you to share your screen.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks so much. You can listen to me?
Yes, I could.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's still clear.
Yeah, all right. Oh, just a moment. Can I start?
As you please. As you please.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah. Hello, my name is Hiroyuki Miyake, a professor of the University of Kitakyushu. So my major is social geography, as well as ESD, namely Education for Sustainable Development. Today, I will give a keynote speech whose title is here I showed. The present ESD in Japan and Kitakyushu. Yeah, so today's content of keynote speech as follows. Objectives of my keynote speech. Second, brief history of ESD in Japan and in Kitakyushu. And the function, and third is the function of Kitakyushu ESD Council as prime mover to lead Kitakyushu's ESDs. And inform the ESD of Miyake, Professor Miyake's tutorial class, we call it a seminar of University of Kitakyushu. And fourth is a conclusion. Okay, I'll start. Yeah. First, objectives of this keynote speech. First, understanding the background of ESD for 2030 or ESD for SDGs. Second, understanding the case of ESD in Japan. And third, understanding ESD in Kitakyushu, including Professor Miyake's tutorial class of University of Kitakyushu in terms of SDGs. Now, I will explain about the history of the ESD. Of course, the participants of this international conference, there is so many participants who knows the history of the ESD. I hope so. Anyway, I will continue to explain. Okay, we can trace the starting point to 1992 UN Conference on Environment and Development, so-called Rio Summit held Brazil. It declares Agenda 21 one. In 2002, the World Summit on Sustainable Development, namely Rio Plus 10, Johannesburg, South Africa, was held. UN at the time, UN General Assembly adopted resolution on the decade of ESD. So in 2005, such UN decade of ESD started up to 2014. In final year of the UNDESD, UNESCO World Conference on ESD was held in Aichi, Nagoya, Japan, and gave Aichi Declaration and launch of Global Action Programs on ESD. We call GAP up to 2019. And in 2019, ESD for 2030 was launched. Okay, here I showed the leading bodies of ESD in the world. So the leading body of the ESD in the world are next two ones. First is UNU IAS. It means the United Nations University Institute of Advanced Studies. And it has a good relationship with RCE. RCE means a regional center of expertise for ESD. So the number of RCE is 182 cities and regions. Kitakyushu, of course, is one of them. Whereas Japan has 8 cities region RCE in age. So second is UNESCO, which have good relations with UNESCO associated schools. UNESCO associated school covered from primary school to high school. They can give the following services. First, support of the international understanding, peace, intercultural dialogue, sustainable development, and quality education in practice. The second, the new teaching and learning approaches based on UNESCO's core values and priorities. The third is teaching and learning, capacity building, innovative teaching, and participative learning. Okay, looking at this map of RCEs, more than 180 becomes RCE with the top majority of Asia. So as soon as UN decade of ESD had started, the concept of ESD were gradually expanding in the world. RCEs and UNESCO associated schools were also increasing. At the same time, they created a network on ESD like RCE network. In 2014, when the UN decade of ESD had ended, or GAP, it means the Global Action Program has started in 2015. In order to enable strategic focus and foster stakeholder commitment, the Global Action Program, GAP, on education for sustainable development, ESD, has identified the following 5 priority action areas to advance the ESD agenda. First is advancing policy. The second is transforming learning and training environment. Third is building capacities of educators and trainers. Fourth is empowering and mobilizing youth. Fifth is accelerating sustainable solutions at a local level. In 2019, GAP has ended to be taken over to ESD for 2030. While a worldwide SDGs campaign have already started, ESD for 2030 covered SDGs. Most of the goals have not been able to achieve in many countries, including Japan, of course. Here, the ESD recognized a prime mover to achieve 70 SDGs. So the education or a study in case of the ESD is to tackle such a problem with critical thinking, keeps independently, in cooperation with multi-stakeholders. It means the collaboration. So after we got the concept and the content of the ESD, now I want to shift to the ESD in Japan. Okay, first, the Japan ESD consists of UNESCO associated schools and ESD Resource Center of Japan, which are run by Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and Japanese Society of ESD as an academic body, and RCEs. And here the RCE means, as I said earlier, the RCE means Regional Center of Excellence for ESDs. Okay, I said in Japan we have 8 RCEs. Of course, in Indonesia, I think 3 RCEs. Is it right? Yeah. Anyway, the second is ESD Resource Center of Japan. has many offices in Japan, in Tokyo, 8 local branches in local areas. Okay. Back to the UNESCO associated schools. The number of UNESCO associated schools increased to 15 in 2005, 705 in 2013, 1,120 in 2020 in Japan, while about the 11,000 in 182 countries of the world. So in this way, through the expansion of increasing the number of the UNESCO or associated schools in the world, so this concept of ESD also expanded. And the third body is the establishment of Japanese Society of ESD. This is the academic bodies, So the first annual meeting was held in Nara University of Education with memberships of 360 members on August 2018. Just 3 years back, Yeah, and RC, about the RC is increasing from 6 to 8 in August 2020. So they hold a network meeting once a year. So the next, I will tell about Kitakyushu's challenge for sustainable urban city to look for the ESD in Kitakyushu. Okay, so in the case of the RC Kitakyushu and University of Kitakyushu. So perhaps, I don't know whether the participant of this international conference know the location of the Kitakyushu, Yeah, of course, Tokyo, Kyoto, Nagoya, and Osaka is very famous. Even the Fukuoka, yeah. But the Kitakyushu is, the population is less than 1 million. That's why I'm not sure if you don't know the location of the Kitakyushu, but let me see and identify the location of Kitakyushu in this presentation. Okay, yeah. So according to this map, Kitakyushu is located in the west part of Japan, near Korea. Okay. Yeah, and these are the views of Kitakyushu, famous for eco-friendly industrial cities. And and these photos are various kinds of museums like Toto museums and animation museums and environmental museums. So I ask you to come to Kitakyushu and visit such interesting museums. Kitakyushu has many kinds of historical and cultural spots, like Kokura Castle and Mojiko Harbor retro areas. And Kitakyushu has developed as an industrial city, since Yahata Steel Company opened in 1901. Every day, black colored. You can see this photo. Black colored smoke was emitted from factories. So they illegally, constructed the house along with Murasaki Gawa rivers. Yeah. So in order to regain the blue skies, a women's association, the movement started in Tobata world, where the most polluted area. They made a survey on level of the suit by washed white sheets and made a comparison of elementary student absent rate between the polluted Kitakyushu area and unpolluted rural area. So they produce 8 millimeter film cinema by themselves, while the title was, whose title was Regain Blue Sky. It was so impressive that gave much impact to other cities' women's association. As a result, Kitakyushu local government and steel companies made agreement of pollution control. Yeah, so the women's action with the effort of industry, academia, and government and the citizens stopped the generation of pollution. Therefore, Kitakyushu cities received Prime Minister's Green City Award in 1982 and received the first, Global 500 as first Japanese city in 1990. These photos shows how clear the Kitakyushu's sky and sea became, you know. So the AFN informed the main organizations of Kitakyushu ESDs. The first one is the Kitakyushu ESD Council. We call it RCE Kitakyushu, explained just now. The second is ESD section, Department of Environmental Education, the Kitakyushu local government. And the third is UNESCO associated schools. At present, Kitakyushu has 16 schools, including Sugao Elementary School, where they study getting help of local persons on agriculture and food. Is very famous. Fourth is University Kitakyushu, our universities, including faculty and Center of Regional Development, and Professor Miyake's tutorial group, my class, Department Policy Studies, and lastly the Kitakyushu Environmental Museum. So after we got the historical background of the Kitakyushu, now I will explain the function of the Kitakyushu ESD Council as a prime mover of ESD campaign in Kitakyushu. So this figure shows the present structure of RC Kitakyushu, namely Kitakyushu ESD Council. It consists of 82 stakeholders, like administrative bodies, private companies, NGOs, and schools. A general meeting, executive body, board, and steering committee are very significant as decision making. And stakeholder promotion project team and human resource development project team, and event project team, and branding project team, and research survey and international exchange project team make practice in each field. Here, I will introduce the social contribution of the Kitakyushu ESD. In 2011, when the Eastern Japan the earthquake occurred, Kitakyushu ESD Council held a charity concert for disaster relief, and the chairperson of the RC Kitakyushu donated money to victims of earthquake. And in 2013, the second earthquake charity concert was held. And this photo shows the production of the postcard by recycling milk container made of paper done by the event project team. And For me personally, I belong to the research research and survey and international exchange project. And I will explain content of our project. So the first is survey on ESD recognition in to student Kitakyushu. Second is a plan to survey on company and gender balance. And third is producing ESD materials about osechi dishes, which means New Year celebration dishes in terms of traditional wisdom. Fourth is international exchange with RC Tonyong and RC Inje, South Korea. Yeah, because as I showed, I mean, the Kitakyushu, the location of Kitakyushu in Japan. So the Kitakyushu and Korea, especially the Busan, such a distance is only the 250 kilometers. Yeah, so short. I mean, from the distance from Tokyo. You know. Okay. Yeah. So now I'll shift to the explanation on education or SDGs through food bank campaign education. On this food bank campaign consists of many SDGs. So it can be called the integrated study of environment and social welfare through field work. Yeah. So the collection types of food bank are divided into two types. One is food collection from companies, supermarket, and agricultural farms, and another is called food drive, meaning the food collection from the household. So in Japan, there are a lot of food are facing loss. For example, 6.12 million tons of food are at a loss in 2017. Such a volume of food loss includes from house 2.84 million, 46%, and from factories and supermarket 3.28 million, it shares 54%. Yeah, so the Food Bank Kitakyushu Life Again has 4 services field, which are food bank, and it means the food bank means the food collection, the family support and safety net of the food and public relation. And the Food Bank Kitakyushu Life Again got a victory, first prize in Kitakyushu SDGs contest award contest with high evaluation to the SDGs activities. So the food bank's activities related to here you can see the SDGs goal 1, 3, 4, 12, 17. So this is the Professor Miyake. My tutorial class. So University of Kitakyushu conducted a food loss reduction. In my tutorial class, there are 3 projects. So the one is the study tour to Korea and Indonesia and Bangladesh. But for the last 2 years, due to the COVID-19, we couldn't visit a foreign country. Yeah, that's why we visit the Okinawa and Ishigaki Island. It's a southern island of Japan. You know. Yeah. So the climate, the environment is similar to the Indonesia. So the Ainoshima Island project and food loss reduction student project. So these 3 a project recognized as project-based learning. Yeah. So the now I want to the food shift to the food loss reduction project of my class. Yeah. So the you can see the, in Japan, in Kitakyushu, this 2021 rhythmic gymnastics World Championship was held from 29 to 31 October. Just the 1 week, 2 weeks back, and student Miyake tutorial group came to the place to collect disposable food and counted the number of the bread and pre-cooked food, Yeah. So of course, the players and I'm the related person to the this gymnastic world champion Kitakyushu. So after that, they took the dinners. There are so many the untouched the food the disposed. That's why we try to go to the place to collect such a disposed food, So in university campus, many students gathered to receive such a food. Food was distributed to participating students as an emergent food pantry in University of Kitakyushu. So it start start at 11 p.m. From 29 to 31 October. It means for 3 hours. So the starting time was so late, but so many students came to receive such a food, Yeah. So I will show the volume of the food disposed from a facility and participants of emergent food pantries. At first, the volume of distributed food was pre-cooked food, the 205 packs, various kinds of bread, 48 box. So perhaps one box consists of, say, about 30 or 40 bread, the banana, the 489, and apple, and 1,817. So the total weight and 833 kilograms. So the number of participants at the University of Kitakyushu is 88 students in 29 October, and 74 students in 30 October, the 42 students in 31st October. So of course, we made a survey to get some voices from the participants, So we collected the voices of participants as impression and opinion from the participants. I will give some example. So I am happy to reduce food loss and get food. Under the COVID-19, the economic condition gets worse. So the food pantry can help me. I wish this kind of event will be held again. It is wonderful to reduce food loss and distribute it economically weak students. So I will give another case of emergent tomatoes distribution service. These tomatoes are collected from the tomato farms. During time is 1 hour of 10th and 11th July 2020. So the last year's event. Yeah, target student who reduce income by part-time job due to COVID-19. So I will show the result of the event. So the visiting student number, 10th of July, 8, and distributed tomatoes 58, and distributed rice pack 48, and 11th of July, 2020, visiting student number 21, and tomatoes 122, and rice pack and 112. Yeah, so the totals are the 29 and 180 and 160. Yeah, through these the project, the PBS. Effect of the student study was very clear. At present, students were studying about food loss problems and SDGs theoretically by reading books. At the same time, they are making activities promote the food bank campaign with much fun. After COVID-19, students will visit schools and civic centers, citizen centers to teach food bank to pupils of elementary schools and the residents in the localities. As a result, students uh, creativity skills and action power get higher in understanding ESDs. Now I'm coming to the conclusion of the here. I will conclude. Sorry. At first, ESD has been expanded to the world through United Nations Decade of ESD. Behind it, UNU, United Nations University Institute of Advanced Studies, and UNESCO played an important role in the world level. In Japan, the number of RCE on ESD increased with the support of Ministry of Environment, and while UNESCO led the UNESCO associated schools. In Kitakyushu, centered on Kitakyushu ESD Council, RC, so-called RC Council, Kitakyushu, which has their own project. Stakeholders has been promoting SDGs by themselves. For example, Food Bank has started education for SDGs through the study tour, food drive, or food pantry in the field. In our university, students came to get more knowledge and higher skills through PBL, like emergent food pantry, by understanding methods to solve problems of food loss and food. Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, I will finish. Mr. Moderator, mute. Mr. Moderator, your mic is mute. Mr. Moderator, mute.
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you. I'm truly sorry. The problem is coming from the host because I myself could not unmute my speaker. Truly sorry. So I don't have the authority for this Zoom. All right, thank you. Okay, there were three wonderful presentations coming from three distinguished keynote speakers. I do hope for those who have still some questions left and they need to clear up some minds and ideas to fill the gap inside the presentations, you can raise your hand first, and then you can unmute yourself and start your camera or video to ask the questions directly to each keynote speakers. I invite you all. And if you have a problem with English, it's okay to direct message me in my chat box, and then I can translate it right away in English if you please to do so. Thank you. Okay, to summarize the whole idea of three presenters, not to make it what do you call that, cheaper, but the idea of what Mr. Adriadi has already delivered is talking about the link of the language and eco-linguistics, how language could shape our ideas and visions toward the environments, and how the English teaching methodologies could improve the awareness of the students in a more active and dynamic way to perceive the environments, while the Professor Dr. Norishams Muhammad want to improve more inclusive in the 4 points of the SDGs, and Professor Daisy has been, Prof. Kitakyuso has been delivering the information what has been done in the urban developments, from the black smoke screen society into more blue sky society towards the Japan collaborations on several NGOs and communities to make more impactful SDGs. May I have questions? Anyone want to clear their head? It's okay. It's going to be very relaxed, and then anyone can share their ideas or even giving commands. Okay, there is one question on my private message asking this. Most probably for Mr. Adrian Novawan and Professor Dr. Norishams. And there is a question coming from Julian. Is asking, what is your view about the role of language in education during the pandemic? Is there any language shift or language changes to accommodate the changes in the medium of teaching and learning process? The questions that have been pondered by all teachers and students today. Do we communicate in a very different way today because we need technology as a mediums of understanding each other? And then do we need a new medium of teaching and learning process as well? Thank you. Shall we start with Mr. Adrian Novawan first? Would you please?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator, for the question from Mr. Julian. Right. So I think, yes, the notion of ecological perspective makes us as the educator, particularly language educator, to also be aware of the use of technology itself, because based on the chart that I have been previously presented, then technology can become one of the artifacts which is available in the environment. So it means that because technology is also used as a medium for communication, then of course it has become one of the important parts of within the notion of ecological linguistics. And in this case, if you ask related to whether our communication changed during this pandemic because of the technology, yes, of course, yes. Actually, some part have been presented by Professor Datin as well related to difficulties in communication. And it is also a challenge for language educator as well, because teaching during pandemic, we rely ourselves on the communication between student and also student and teachers relies on technology, online communication, which is also a part of a challenge in the notion of ecological perspective, because in ecological perspective, we have to start from the perception of the student itself. Then while communicating using technology, this is a bit inferior for students, because we cannot build relations in the level of perception as expected in the ecological concept. For example, we are teaching using action-based teaching. Then, of course, when the communication is relying on technology, online communication, distance learning, for example, then of course it will have also a lot of problems related to the quality. As I previously mentioned, that one important aspect of ecological teaching is that the quality of actions. So this is a challenge. I'm not sure if it is answering the question, Pak Julian's question. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
My pleasure, Mr. Adriani. Followed by Professor Narisham, please. This is the questions for all teachers and educators, as well as students, most probably. They need to know this.
Yes, thank you for the question. I didn't quite get the name of the person who was asking the question.
The name is Julian. The name is Julian.
All right,
okay.
Julian. All right, I was looking for him or her on the screen. Okay, thank you for the question. You're asking, if I understand correctly, whether we need to do adjustment to the language as a medium of instruction.
I'm sorry. I'm afraid you are freezing, Professor Narisham. Or is it me? All right, while we're getting back online for the Professor Risham, this is exactly the questions of Pak Julian. The communications today has been shifting very much from the person to person, from flash to flash. Now we have so much problem with technologies, not to mention the infrastructures. Okay. Well, we're still waiting for Professor Narisham getting back online. I still invite you to give any questions you want to ask to the speakers from the presentations, etc. There are many information we can get from around the globe today that we are struggling with the pandemic, and we are struggling with the food productions and distributions as well around the world. And we can learn many success stories from Professor Miyake as well, that what has been done in Japan is very remarkable and astonishing to see how from the less ecological environment now Japan could strive into a more food secure nations.
I'm sorry, I apologize. This is one of it's demonstrating itself, the internet problems.
Yeah.
It's probably Saturday afternoon and it's the internet highway is full.
Oh. Yeah.
On and off in Malaysia now. I'm sorry, but it then described what I was saying just now about this problem with digital. It just goes off. So we're talking about chicken and egg here, the problem of the language, because we have moved away from when we teach English as a subject, we've moved away from the translation method long time ago. Yeah, so we do not want to use the language, our own native language. We want to use English as it is because we're teaching that language. So we want to be, the example. We want to be the model for the students to follow. But again, like you said, with the technology, with the removal of the person as a teacher in front of you, the face-to-face, it's going to be a problem. But I believe that it is still important to use that language. But otherwise, if you're teaching other subjects where English is just a medium of instruction, which is actually the vehicle for the knowledge to be learned, then I think it will be beneficial if you would use both languages, even though the medium of instruction should be in English, but you could use your mother tongue or the standard, like in Malaysia is Bahasa Malaysia, or the mother tongue if you can speak Mandarin or Tamil, to actually stresses on the points and explain better. But if you're teaching English, I still believe the best is always to throw the person to the deeper end of the pool and use the language, even if they're not very sure, understand perfectly. So that's my belief. And I hope I answer your question.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Julian could agree with that. Yes, not to mention we have also problem with some technical terms as well coming from these millennials, because once in a while I got the chat box saying that, I'm sorry sir, I was AFK. AFK means away from keyboard. I just know that. So there's new terms and communications that happen in the community of the youngsters and the students. I don't really know that. I don't accustom myself with that language before, but now we're getting into their dimensions and world on how they perceive the world of virtual and actual. Okay, that's very fantastic as well. So we need to adapt ourselves. Really need to get into their characters and world as well. Okay, thank you. Anyone want to ask questions? More questions? Giving comments are also welcome. Comments are also welcome. You can share your ideas. And if any difficulties using Bahasa, and then I can translate it right away. It's okay. Any questions? Even the internet wants a tutti, yeah? Even the internet wants a tutti.
Is raising hand, Mr. Moderator.
Okay. Which one?
Raising hand.
Oh yes, you can unmute yourself and ask to the speakers.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity given. So my question actually goes to Professor Nurisam, which for me presents a quite relevant issue regarding my daily routine today as a teacher. And this is my very basic question. So the one that we call as a normal era before the pandemic is that we teach the student inside the classroom directly, and the students are actually used to today's situation. It means that the online learning has become their habitual routine today. And then we hope that not long after this, we are going to go back to our normal routine to meet them inside the classroom. But actually, as a teacher, I'm quite afraid about that that situation. It means that we are going to go to something new. Okay, so based on your study or maybe your experience, Professor Nurisam, could you give us some advice about what should we do to deal with that so-called new situation? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. This is, I think I failed to mention during when I was giving my keynote. Actually, we are never going to go back to where we were before the pandemic. I don't think so. My personal opinion, I don't think so. But we'll probably move towards nearing to what we were before. But actually now, as it is, because the school has reopened, the universities have reopened, we are no more online, neither are we face-to-face, in the sense that we have gone to hybrid. There's this new hybrid learning where in a classroom, you have the face-to-face and you also have students still online because they cannot come. And some will be in quarantine, some will be casual contact, some will be close contacts to the people with COVID, so they cannot come on campus. There are also people who are not vaccinated and they can't come to the campus. So we are moving, in all countries, we are moving towards hybrid teaching and learning. And this hybrid teaching and learning is what we need to master right now. So I think you need to, again, relearn and retool. The teachers need to relearn and retool and get ourselves accustomed with now, again, another kind of approach, which means that you need to have the proper balance of teaching people in the classroom because they're face-to-face, but we cannot also ignore those people online. So, we again have to meeting another challenge, which I think we need to actually get ourselves accustomed as fast as possible, because it's just like arrived on our doorstep. Do I answer your question? Thank you.
Yeah. Paguli has been struggling with the internet connections as well. I do believe that. Okay, so more questions coming up. And in another 50 minutes, we're going to go to the breakout room for each sessions. Okay, please do not leave the Zoom meeting. And for this another sessions, you will be distributed in each room. Okay, that your name belong to. It's okay. We still have another 15 minutes. If you have still any questions to come up with, please share your ideas. I know some lovely and wonderful faces around here. Okay, you can share your ideas and comments. And it's fantastic as well to see what the presentation has been done by the all speakers. Okay. More questions? Or comments? I'm afraid some of the participants are now having prayers because we're now reaching 12 back in Indonesia. So they're turning off the camera. But I do have some questions as well coming on my thoughts. And I have one for
recording stopped.
Speakers if you want to. To Mr. Adriadi, I've got questions about how this virtual, what are the challenges during this pandemic, the virtuals, to improve the awareness of the students to lead their agency in conjunction with the environmental, less anthropocentric perspective, because we're not touching anymore the greeneries, today. We don't have that much of a respect. How do you provide them? Do we need to reconstruct our syllabus or curriculums, etc.? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's a very a difficult question to answer.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, very many things involved in the answer. Yeah, I think this is the challenge actually, to reframe our practice, particularly because everything is done online and also technology is used in our teaching. So again, actually, based on our practice, we need to also consider institutional policy related to curriculum.
Okay.
And continue to our pedagogical plan and also the assessment mode, for example. Then in this case, the notion of ecological perspective will actually helps us to reframe our practice, for example, related to the pedagogy itself. So more on how to make our students to do more actions rather than rote learning activities. So I think this is also very important. Well, it can be, for example, dividing our students to discuss together in small groups. So I think in a very big class, it is very difficult to apply the notion of ecological perspective.
Okay.
So it needs more relational and also interactions and also actions. When related to the awareness to the environment, then we can also include into the material itself. So how to inspire the students with the situations, the conditions and the environment. And I think from the materials and also the topics, then it can also be integrated into what kinds of action that can be initiated that the student can try to do. So while acting related to the environment, then at the same time, they also do languaging. So making meaning with the language, for example, learning English. So I think that that is in my mind, Mr. Moderator. Is that a question?
Yeah, it really clears up my mind and everything. Thank you. Okay, any questions? If I'm not, I'm really curious to ask Professor Miyake. Okay, Professor Miyake, I do have a questions about if you know the paradox that you have a very high productions in the factory. Let's say, for example, you tell a lot about what you did in the past. Kitab Kyushu was very black, and then those smoke screen are everywhere. Okay, then you need to reduce it in order to have a better food supply and everything. But how could you minimize that, the food productions, but as long as to keep the balance of the food production? What are the key factors? Could you just give me like 2 or 3 key factors that could balance this? Because the demand and supply, the demand and supply couldn't meet that, the balance. If you need to lower the productions from the factory, then you need to stop the factory to have a more green environment. But as well as you need to feed the whole country. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I mean, you would, you would ask the, the balance.
The balance.
Production and consumption.
Yes.
Of the food.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, about the company. Yeah. Try to reduce the food loss as much as possible, Yeah, but unfortunately, so the company can't reduce waste zero,
Oh,
yeah. That's why of course, compared to the the previous record, the food loss volume, the now at present, there are not so much changed, In Japan, about the 8 million. About nowadays, the 10 years ago, the 8 million food loss was produced, but nowadays the 6 million. But we are very conscious about the reduction of the food loss, but still during the 10 years, just the 1/4 of the food loss was can be reduced, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, the food loss is very much problems. Yeah, but just throwing such a disposed food
disposable food.
into the the waste disposal area. So that the waste, you know. Yeah, that's why how we can make use of such a disposed food.
Okay.
Yeah, so the food bank is important role to solve the problems, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there is another one question is coming up, Prof. Miyake. This is coming from Julius Thomas below. He asks, it's more like a personal question. How is the learning situation in Japan during the COVID-19 pandemic today? How do you teach them and the situations?
I see. Yeah. So in the elementary school and the secondary school level and the highest secondary, just the last year, just 1 month was online. Online education, you know. But mostly the Ministry of Japan, promote to the open the normal education. Yeah, that's why the still nowadays the number of the infected patient to COVID-19 is decreasing, but still 250 in Japan generated. Yeah, but now the most of the life we can regain such a normal lifestyles. Of course, keeping a mask and using a sanitizer and keep social distance. Yeah, that the mask, you know, required thing, you know. But in Japan, mostly in university also, some students try to online education, but mostly the face-to-face the teaching and learning common, you know.
Okay, I hope that answer the questions, Julius. I think every country now is really struggling. Synchronous, synchronous. They were trying hybrid one today. Okay, those are the pain and the struggle and the challenges that we need to really overcome. We are overwhelmed by the spirit of the students who do really want to go to the school and then they need to get vaccinated as well. Okay, I don't want to hold you any longer because the participants will be distributed into the breakout room afterwards. Okay, this 1954, they still have 5 minutes left to go to the breakout room. But please, for all the participants, do not leave the Zoom because the operator will be helping you out with the breakout room channels. Okay, and for these sessions, I do thank you for all the keynote speakers, Mr. Adri Novawan, Professor Miyake, and the lovely Professor Dr. Narisa Muhammad. I wish I could still go to Malaya to enjoy the bus, you know. The bus is going everywhere.
Please come. You're most welcome.
Okay, the station is never still, you know, swarming back to memory everything I had in mind. Thank you very much. And then I do hope for you, if you still have any information regarding the presentations, you can reach the keynote speaker through their email, I suppose. And I do believe all the speakers and the keynote speakers,
yes, you can.
They are very open to be your partners in discussions and more academic perspective regarding their specific issue and interest of their academic career. Thank you very much. And please enjoy the next sessions for all the participants. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. In the next month, I will go to the Indonesia.
Thank you very much. Yes.
It's a pleasure to have you all. Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, see you.
See you.
Yeah.
See you. Bye.